Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Thank you for being here.
I would say my pleasure, except we've topped over 230,000 people have died of the coronavirus so far, and that's what the president is trying to change the subject from, to talk about people voting in their cars and the rest, rather than talking about people dying from his miserable failure when it comes to addressing a pandemic in our country.
Well, Madam Speaker, I suppose that goes to the first question, which is, what do you see as the stakes tomorrow?
The stakes? Oh, our democracy is at stake. That's what is at stake tomorrow. And again, I believe in the American people. I want them all to vote, however they vote, but I want their vote to be respected. And it should be respected by the President of the United States, first and foremost. But we have no reason to think that that will be the case. But again, we feel confident. I was on the phone, of course, constantly with with the candidates, and both incumbents who are running and candidates in our red to blue. And there's a great deal of confidence on the ground. So I feel confident that we will win the House. It's very possible we will win the Senate. And on January 20th, Joe Biden will be inaugurated President of the United States.
A confident stance. You know, Madam Speaker, you're a leader of your whole party. You're a leader of the entire House. But you also, as I think you know, are seen as a big leader and barrier breaker for women in politics, rightly so. And so I did want to ask you about something. Again, I've mentioned this to viewers. We're learning more than we usually know earlier with this record-breaking vote. And so we're seeing women outnumbering men here in what is now 90-plus million votes. 53% of them are women, or 46 million total compared to 38 million for men. I just wanted to get your reaction on that potentially record-breaking number if it continues into tomorrow.
Well, I've always said that women are very smart voters, and women of color especially very smart voters. But I do think that they're exercising great judgment. They care about our country's future. That's all about the children. And anyone who sees the performance of the president, whether it's degrading the air that our children breathe, undermining the education they received, assault on the economic security of their families, opposition to protecting them from gun violence, the list goes on and on. So women make judgments based on what it means to them in their lives, and they see very clearly that Joe Biden's vision for our country, his knowledge of the issues, his connection to people and their concerns is something that is making a difference in this election. Hence so many women voting and so many women voting for Joe Biden.
Yeah, and it's really striking because we know in general and from last time, women voters more skeptical of Donald Trump. So if those numbers continue, that could have a huge impact tomorrow. We're all waiting on that. We did put something together looking at the way that you, as mentioned, as a top Democrat in government, have dealt with this very unusual president. There have been Trump-Pelosi clashes. Let's take a brief look.
I think Nancy Pelosi is doing a terrible disservice to the people of our country.
Mr. President, please don't characterize the strength that I bring to this meeting. I don't hate anyone and always prayed for the president.
God bless America. Thank you very much.
What did you think of Trump's speech tonight?
I tore it up.
Nancy is a mess. The Democratic Party is a mess.
The president is afraid of the American people. He knows that on the legit, it'd be hard for him to win.
Here we are, election eve. Do you see him as the most challenging, as the least legitimate of any president you've had to deal with? And what do you say to voters who are watching this? And you've heard it. It may not be true, but you've heard some people say, gosh, I don't know the difference. I haven't paid attention. What's the difference between all these options and parties?
Well, first, let me just say that this president, of all the presidents I've seen and studied in American history, is the most insecure. He knows he can't win by letting the people speak their voices, so he's trying to disrupt the election. We are concerned about foreign powers coming in and undermining the integrity of our elections. He is undermining the integrity of our election himself. And why? Because he's a very insecure person. That's why he takes cheap shots at everyone. He's really projecting his own weaknesses, and he recognizes them because he has them. But let's forget about him. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what this election is about. Elections are always about the future, about how we make the future better for our children. And when he talks about who loves America, who loves America, who loves our land from sea to shining sea, who wants to protect it? Not Donald Trump. Who loves America? By and large, a nation of immigrants, the beautiful and constant reinvigoration of America, of newcomers to our country. Who denigrates them? Donald Trump. Who loves our Constitution and all of the rights contained therein and the beautiful genius of the separation of powers? Not Donald Trump. He undermines our Constitution. And who loves our values as a country, a beacon of hope to the world? Not a president who's taking babies out of the arms of their parents without any thought of sending them home. That's not who we are as a country. So this election has a clear contrast, and a person so completely different, so confident in his beliefs in our country, so connected to the concerns, hopes, and dreams of the American people, so authentic about what he stands for, and that is Joe Biden. So it's going to be a great day for our country. We will contend with the president's skullduggery. He's actually, in so many ways, just trying to change the subject away from the fact that he has been, again, a total failure in terms of this pandemic, among other things. But the fact is that the people will speak tomorrow, and their voices must be heard. Their vote is their voice. And that is what a democracy is about. It's not about undermining that voice or vote because of your own insecurity as president, because you know you can't win unless you disrupt and cause chaos.
It is Tuesday, the 3rd of November of 2020, Election Day in America, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special on this Election Day in America is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small, scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. That's right, we gotta smoke them out. Well, I was going to have a much more in-depth talk about Harris County in Texas, pretty much ceding power to the Republicans once again. You know, when they lose in court, they still win, as David said earlier. Harris County, out of an abundance of caution, decided to close down 9 of their 10 drive-through voting sites because Hanen, the judge, he didn't rule necessarily, but speculated that, I don't know if those tents qualify as, quote, buildings, end quote, which are required on Election Day polling places. Now, to be clear, those 9 drive-through tented polling places are at actual buildings, and so people can go in and vote. It's not the best. You can still vote at those 9 closed-down drive-through sites. But you'll have to wear a mask and all of the other problems about going inside, which was the whole idea during a pandemic. Of course, in Texas, you couldn't ask for an absentee ballot if you cited the pandemic because that's just an emotional thing, not a real medical thing. That's how it works in Texas. So the Trump crew are pulling out all the stops everywhere. And of course, like I said, here's an example of what that they lost in court. 9 out of 9, 10 out of 10. And they still somehow won. So the voter suppression is going on, and yet people are not letting that stop them. Because you know why? This is America, and this crime mob cartel, this crime cartel government has awoken the sleeping giant. I kept telling everybody so, and here we are. So we'll see how many millions of ballots Trump and his crew will be able to suppress, because you know they will be suppressing millions. And yet, they're still going to lose by millions, and they may not be able to cobble together an electoral victory. Not like last time, because, hey, we're on to you, Vlad. And whoever else is out there, too. You know, it's not just Vlad, we know. Though I got to tell you, Vlad militarized it, declared war on the United States, and is using asymmetrical warfare against us. And we have electeds in our government Vichy collaborating, I would say, seditious and treasonous activity on their part. And I'm looking at you, Ron Johnson. I might even have to be looking at the DNI Ratcliffe. Certainly Scott Atlas has been caught up in it. Oh, he didn't know. He's supposed to be a smart guy, but he didn't know. RT. Russia Today. That should give you a clue, Scott. All right. Well, he just shrugged his shoulders and said, it's all a libertarian dream anyway. Here we are in the clouds of our imagination. All right. Well, you're going to be brought back to earth rather soundly. And that clanking that you hear, yeah, jail doors. Of course, Trump fears jail less than the reprisal from Vlad. You know, I mean, look what happened to the Sausage King. Crossbowed in an outside sauna, hot tub. Saunas can't be outside. That doesn't make any sense. He was in a hot tub, crossbowed, very conveniently. Oh, and another tragedy is that just this last summer, his son conveniently died in a motorcycle accident. I guess they're trying to send him a message. If he didn't get it, he got it now. Yep. So that happens so conveniently, which I am trying to trademark that term, by the way, in Vlad's Russia, and Trump fears a crossbow accident. I don't know. And it was a Red Sparrow that did the guy in, too, from reports. They say he was in the tub with his partner. I don't know what that means. And that she called the cops. Uh-huh. Okay. So I'm wondering, you know, there is a Red Sparrow in the White House right now from Slovenia. Yeah. She's not happy about being his handler. You know, let's be clear. She hates the whole job. I mean, she hates Christmas. They come at us like, you don't celebrate Christmas because you let Jews celebrate. Really? Where did Christmas come from, fella? Anyway, we hopefully will be able to forget this guy, except we won't. And if we do, we're going to be in a big mistake. Do not forget this fella. No, we don't want to put him in the dustbin of history. We want to hold this personage up for all that you would not do to, further a democracy. You can't have a mobster running a democracy. It just doesn't work because it's not a democracy anymore. Every mobster will tell you, hey, it's not personal, it's business. And we're running government like a business, so don't take it personally, even though they come at you personally, just like Trump does. Because that's what mobsters do, is capricious. It has no efficiency. And you can't expect a mobster to have, the enlightened despot qualities to be able to have the poet, philosopher, king mobster. A rare bird indeed. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on Election Day in America? Louisiana sneaked a scheme to ban all abortions onto their ballot. Yeah, they're sneaky that way. A federal judge handed Trump an election eve blow last night by blocking his rule denying green cards to immigrants if they used public assistance. And the U.S. Surgeon General pled not guilty to violating Hawaii's pandemic restrictions. Well, actually, his lawyer pled it for him because, hey, there's two systems of justice in America. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the International Sports Court began a 4-day hearing on the Russian doping case. And they're not going to be able to be in the Olympics or hold an Olympics, and they don't like that. Vlad hates that. And a joint statement from 71 parties to the Rome Statute that established the International Criminal Court to prosecute genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity reiterated their opposition to U.S. sanctions on the court. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and our chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link, which really is just near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Your recurring contribution that could even be, how about the size of an espresso type coffee drink? If you could send those funds to us once a month, we stretch those dollars beyond compare. Pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue resisting as the founders originally intended, and also fulfill our civic duty. And it's all because of your generosity, and there have been quite a few who have been very generous over these many years, and we thank them, and we thank those of you who will consider doing so in the future. Thank you. Do please follow Netroots Radio on Twitter. You can find it on Twitter at Netroots Radio. How simple is that? Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that, and so much more, too. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then link that up on Twitter and those other social platforms too. And you know which one I'm talking about, but there's others as well. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please, most importantly, pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, do please download those pods. All right, let's dive into this first offering here. This is a maddening story here. Not even Poland tried to get away with this, and boy, they poked They poked a sleeping giant in their country, too, now, and women have shut down the whole country to the point that the leader of Poland is going to have to rescind this weird abortion law that pretty much outlaws all abortions. Well, that's what's happening in Louisiana right now. Lisa Needham from the American Independent brings us this offering. Abortion rights have been front and center of late because there's now a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court. However, abortion rights are also on the ballot in 2020. Much of the 2020 election focus has been on Colorado's ballot initiative that would ban nearly all abortions after 22 weeks. But Louisiana also has a ballot measure that has not been as high profile, but could profoundly limit abortion rights in the state. Louisiana's anti-abortion ballot measure asks voters, do you support an amendment declaring that to protect human life, a right to abortion and the funding of abortion shall not be found in the Louisiana Constitution? If the measure passes, it would add language to the Louisiana State Constitution stating, nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to secure or protect a right to abortion or require the funding of abortion. Louisiana would not be the first state to take this approach. Alabama and West Virginia already have similar constitutional provisions enshrining this sort of anti-abortion language, and a state constitution has several purposes. First, it effectively cuts off any state-level constitutional challenge to the law. Louisiana state courts would be prohibited from relying on state constitutional provisions such as due process to determine that abortion is permissible and constitutional. Additionally, if the federal courts overturn Roe v. Wade and leave the availability of abortion up to the states, there would be no constitutional or judicial system pathway to ensuring abortion remain legal in the state. Only the legislature would be able to decide. Worst of all, the proposed constitutional amendment seems to provide no exceptions for people seeking abortions because of rape or incest. And I guess that's because it would violate their religious liberty. Sophia Tureen of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder, Election Day Tuesdays. I might add also, the editor-in-chief at the Associated Press did put out a statement that the AP will not be making any projections until all the votes are counted, and that is noble and correct of them. I wish that other news outlets would do the same. But there's a propaganda outlet or two, and Fox, that will probably not even care about any of that because you know what they want. And it's more than ratings. All right, let's dive into this offering here by Sophia Tureen. A federal judge in Chicago struck down a key immigration rule yesterday, Monday, that would deny green cards to immigrants who use food stamps or other public benefits. A blow to the Trump administration on the eve of the election. Yeah. In a decision that applies nationwide, U.S. District Judge Gary Feinerman rejected the rule that had taken effect recently after the U.S. Supreme Court reversed a hold on the policy following lawsuits. Among other things, Feinerman said the rule violates the Administrative Procedure Act, which makes federal agencies accountable to the public by outlining a detailed process for enacting regulations. Oh, really? The decision marked the latest turn in a complex legal battle over the rule that has been among Trump's most aggressive steps in overhauling the nation's immigration system. I smell the blood of Stephen Miller in this. The Chicago lawsuit, filed by the Illinois Coalition of Immigrant and Refugee Rights and Cook County, was among numerous legal challenges. Under the Trump administration policy, immigration officials could deny permanent residency to legal immigrants over their use of food stamps, Medicaid, housing vouchers, or other public benefits. Oh, you live in Section 8. Oh, you don't get to live in America anymore. Too bad. Green card applicants had to show they wouldn't be burdens to the country or public charges. I guess we haven't come so long a way now, have we? Federal law already required those seeking permanent residency or legal status to prove they wouldn't be a public charge, and I remember this when I had, well, a wife from overseas. She was living here, but she was born overseas. She was a French national, still is. Talk about being loyal to a country. Don't get between a French national and their French, especially a Parisian. Oh, don't do it. Anyway, she had to prove she wouldn't be a public charge. I guess being on Don Johnson's, what was that? I can't even remember the stupid TV show he had in San Francisco. She was on that show. So she wasn't a public charge. Okay, but, this has been a long-standing rule. I remember even back in the day during, the McCarthy era, one of the first things I remember from that time was immigration rules that would come blasting on the TV. It was really kind of weird. I had no idea about Big Brother at the time. But when I read Big Brother, the first thing that came to mind were these weird PSAs about, if you're an immigrant and you're trying to get a green card, we know who you are. Wow, pretty weird, huh? Immigrant rights advocates deemed it a wealth test, while public health experts said it would mean poorer health outcomes and rising costs as low-income migrants chose between needed services and their bid to stay in the country legally. Part of the reason that we extend these types of benefits across the board equally is because it helps everybody equally. You don't want somebody afraid that they're going to be thrown out of the country, not going to the doctor if they are infected with a virus. Senior Policy Counsel Fred Tsao called the rule an attack on legal immigration and criticized the way the Trump administration has instituted policies. We may or may not get a new administration, he said. If we do, we'd like to see a lot of this damage undone. Well, we'd like to see more than that, but yeah, I agree. And hopefully some legislative changes that will actually benefit immigrants instead of scaring them away. Jennifer Simcoe Kelleher of the AP brings us this final offering in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A lawyer for U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams pleaded not guilty yesterday, Monday, on behalf of the official who was cited by Honolulu police for being in a closed park during a trip to help Hawaii cope with a spike in coronavirus cases. Adams did not travel to Hawaii for the arraignment because, hey, he's an official of the government now. Adams' aide, Dennis Anderson Velaluz, who was also cited in August, also pleaded not guilty to violating the emergency order. When an officer found them, the mayor had closed all beach parks to prevent gatherings of people. Adams was taking photos at the Kualoa Regional Park on Oahu's northeastern coast, according to the citation. Adams told the officer he was visiting Hawaii to work with the governor on COVID-19 and didn't know parks were closed because ignorance is bliss when you want to have fun. It's an embarrassment to the state, Adams' Honolulu defense attorney Michael Green said. Oh, really? You're trying to shame them somehow? They're treating him like he brought the pandemic here. No, they're not charging him and acting like that or treating him like that. They're treating him like they would treat anybody who's an idiot and trying to get away with it. You know what I mean. Government officials had waived for Adams a requirement that travelers to Hawaii quarantine for 14 days because he was helping the state. His lawyer said, I'm not suggesting for a moment that because he's the Surgeon General, his rights are greater than any other citizen, Green said, and I'm sure he was winking and had his fingers crossed behind his back when he said it. But he shouldn't be treated worse because of that status, and that's exactly what they're doing. Honolulu prosecutors, on the other hand, said they will treat the case like any other. No one is given special treatment under the law regardless of who they are, said a statement from Deborah Kwan, a spokeswoman for the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Office. All defendants have the same right to due process as anyone else, except this guy gets to have his lawyer come in and plead guilty, and he gets to stay out of state. Adams was in the park with his aide and a tour guide to see if he wanted to go for a swim, his lawyer said, which was allowed. I don't even know if they can prove he took pictures. Now, violating any of the mayor's emergency orders is punishable as a misdemeanor. If found guilty, Adams and his aide could face fines up to $5,000, up to a year in jail, or both. Well, that's something to look forward to after the election. Stay tuned. Let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up on the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
I'm Scott Hirschberger with Scientific American as an American Association for the Advancement of Science Mass Media Science and Engineering Fellow. And here's a short piece from the October 2020 issue of the magazine in a section called Advances, Dispatches from the Frontiers of Science, Technology, and Medicine. The article is titled Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some stories from around the globe. From Mexico, in now flooded caves, researchers discovered the oldest known ochre mines in the Americas. Around 12,000 years ago, inhabitants of the Yucatan Peninsula extracted the red pigment, possibly for use as an antiseptic and sunscreen, or for symbolic purposes such as body painting. From Italy, a massive bloom of pink algae, triggered by low snowfall and high spring and summer temperatures, could accelerate the melting of the Presena Glacier by causing the ice to absorb more sunlight. From Botswana, at least 350 elephants have dropped dead in the Okavango Panhandle since March, and live elephants have acted disoriented or seemed partially paralyzed. With poaching and anthrax ruled out as potential causes, investigators suspect an unknown disease. From Libya, a 7-million-year-old crocodile skull suggests the prehistoric animals may have traveled from Africa to the Americas. Computerized tomography of the fossil, found in Libya, revealed a slight bump in the middle of the snout, a feature of modern American crocodiles but not their African counterparts. From Polynesia, through a genetic analysis of modern-day Polynesians and indigenous people from South America's Pacific coast, scientists concluded the two groups came into contact between AD 1150 and 1230. Where the transoceanic encounter occurred remains unknown, but the team suspects eastern Polynesia. And from the United Arab Emirates, the successful launch of a Mars orbiter called Hope marked the first interplanetary mission conducted by an Arab nation. Carrying instruments to study the red planet's daily and seasonal weather, the spacecraft is set to enter Martian orbit in February 2021. That was Quick Hits. I'm Scott Hirschberger.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
At one of the demonstrations in Kenosha, Wisconsin that erupted after black resident Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back by a white police officer, Kyle Rittenhouse of Illinois apparently shot and killed 2 of the protesters and wounded a 3rd. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Rittenhouse is charged with what Wisconsin calls first-degree intentional homicide, what most jurisdictions call murder. Rittenhouse, who is 17, claimed self-defense. After the shooting, he returned to his nearby home in Antioch, Illinois, 15 miles southwest of Kenosha, leading us to an issue that the Constitution specifically addresses, extradition. The Constitution says that a person charged with a crime in one state who is found in another shall be returned to the state where the crime occurred upon the demand of the governor. The Constitution did not say how this process was supposed to work, so Congress, early on in the country's history, passed the Extradition Act, which requires a judicial process. But the Supreme Court has made clear, as late as 1987, that an extradition proceeding is summary, and only 2 questions need be answered. Are the papers in order, and is the person in court the person that is sought? If so, as the Illinois judge at Rittenhouse's extradition hearing found, that person should be ordered returned to the state where the crime occurred. The founder of the Kenosha chapter of Black Lives Matter said that Rittenhouse, quote, needs to be taken to Wisconsin. The crime was there, which is legally right. Other provisions in the Constitution contain the guarantee of due process and a fair trial. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
Here are some of the big public policies people clearly want, but lawmakers consistently ignore. Paid family leave time. Restrict the power of big money in our elections. Stop rent gouging by greedy corporate landlords. And assert real public oversight to stop police abuses. Now, the good news. In various states, we can vote directly for such policies that have been proposed as ballot initiatives. It's do-it-yourself democracy in action. Of course, bypassing the backroom chicanery of legislative bodies doesn't necessarily bypass the insider power of big money. But at least ballot initiatives force moneyed interests to do their avaricious dirty work outside, allowing us commoners to glimpse their greed. That's certainly the case of a money-soaked mega-fight underway in California over Proposition 22, an abominable attempt by Uber, Lyft, and other multi-billion-dollar behemoths in the gig economy to stiff their own workers. These outfits have amassed their billions by claiming that each of their thousands of workers are independent contractors, not employees. Therefore, say the corporations, they don't have to provide health care or comply with basic labor protections. This year, though, a new California law rejected this blatant corporate ruse, at last allowing employees to get the essential benefits due to them. But a cabal of these giants has ponied up more than $200 million to pass Prop 22, exempting them from doing right by the people who do their work, 8 out of 10 of whom are people of color. If you wonder why our fabulously rich nation keeps sinking deeper into self-destructive inequality, look no further than Prop 22, one of the most underhanded PR campaigns in the history of ballot initiatives. This is Jim Hightower saying, for more information, go to Gig Workers Rising, gigworkersrising.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day that became known as the Greensboro Massacre. Members of the Ku Klux Klan and the American Nazi Party shot and killed 5 participants in a demonstration held by the Workers' Viewpoint Organization, later called the Communist Workers' Party. Workers' Viewpoint organizers had come to Greensboro in an effort to strengthen the unions at the Cone Mills textile plants. At the time, Cone Mills was the largest producer of denim in the world. African-American mill workers faced discrimination and dangerous conditions, including breathing in textile dust that was known to potentially cause brown lung disease. Tensions between the communist organizers and the Ku Klux Klan began to mount. Disagreements also arose between the communists and other union organizing efforts in Greensboro. The Workers' Viewpoint group decided to hold a Smash the Klan demonstration. They coordinated the route of the march with the local police. But on that fateful day, no police were there to provide protection. In broad daylight, cars filled with Klansmen and Nazi members drove up and opened fire on the demonstrators. 5 people fell dead. A criminal trial was held in 1980, and a federal civil rights trial took place in 1984. Both times, the defendants were acquitted by all-white juries. In 2004, Greensboro began a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to address their community history. The second chapter of the final report recounts how Milano Cottle, the Nazi who owned one of the vehicles driven that day, later bragged in an interview that the Klan destroyed the damn Union with its actions against the marchers. After the tragedy, there was a strong backlash in the press against the communist organizers. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Election Day 2020 has finally arrived. Donald Trump is looking like he might be the first one-term president in nearly 3 decades.
Democracy is coming to the USA.
Joe Biden is leading in virtually every poll, seemingly on his way to become the oldest first-term president and the 15th former vice president to ascend to the Oval Office. You know how they always say it all comes down to turnout? Well, duh. But in this case, a whopping 100 million votes have already been cast, according to CNN, Edison Research, and Catalyst. That amounts to more than 47% of registered voters nationwide. 21 states and Washington, D.C. have seen more than half of their registered voters cast their ballots already. But it gets better. In an additional 7 states, North Carolina, Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee, the pre-election vote represents at least 90% of their 2016 total. And in at least 6 states, including Texas, Hawaii, Nevada, Washington, Arizona, and Montana, they have surpassed their total turnout from the 2016 general election. Nationwide, the 100.2 million ballots already cast represents 73% of the more than 136.5 million ballots cast in the entirety of the 2016 presidential election. I wonder what's driving the excitement. Oh, and the voting started as usual in Dixville Notch, New Hampshire, the tiny little township famous for its tradition of being the first in the nation to vote in the middle of the night in the U.S. presidential election. And they went all in on Joe Biden, giving him the votes of all 5 eligible voters. Although it is often an indicator of how the election will go, in 2016, Dixville Notch went for Hillary Clinton. Expect the courts to be very busy dealing with election-related lawsuits over the next couple of months, probably, like the one moving through the Texas courts over drive-through voting in Harris County. A federal judge on Monday rejected Republicans' attempt to invalidate more than 127,000 ballots. But the judge, U.S. District Judge Andrew Hannon, who was appointed by George W. Bush and is well known as a staunch conservative, wasn't happy about it, saying, quote, "If I were voting tomorrow, I would not vote in a drive-through just out of my concern as to whether that's legal or not." Donald Trump, meanwhile, attacked a recent Supreme Court decision allowing Pennsylvania to continue receiving absentee ballots for 3 days after Election Day. He tweeted Monday night, quote, "The Supreme Court decision on voting in Pennsylvania is a very dangerous one. It will allow rampant and unchecked cheating and will determine our entire system of laws. Something must be done." Well, Trump has repeatedly suggested that accepting mail-in votes after November 3rd is akin to election fraud, but counting votes following Election Day is standard practice. This is what happens when you put an ignoramus into the Oval Office. At a rally earlier Monday in Pennsylvania, Trump again blasted the Supreme Court decision, calling it, quote, "a very dangerous decision, and I mean physically dangerous." Well, less than an hour later, Twitter flagged that post for containing disputed content that might be misleading. Might be? One of the issues influencing America's voting decision is the administration's response to the coronavirus pandemic, or lack thereof. On Monday, the coordinator of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, Dr. Deborah Birx, issued a new report with dire warnings directly contradicting Trump. She wrote, quote, "We are entering the most concerning and most deadly phase of this pandemic, leading to increasing mortality. This is not about lockdowns. It hasn't been about lockdowns since March or April. It's about an aggressive, balanced approach that is not being implemented." Trump has already hinted at firing Dr. Fauci. Now Dr. Birx has taken an even harder line, and good for her. The bottom line is that here we are. It's Election Day. There are no vaccines ready, no widely available therapeutics, no new COVID relief package, no preparation to combat the expected winter spread of the virus, and with over 250,000 Americans already dead and forecasts looking even worse, this election is all about COVID-19. By the way, Trump has been proclaiming at his rallies,
"That's all I hear about now. That's all I hear. Turn on television. Right? COVID, 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 COVID. A plane goes down. 500 people dead. They don't talk about it. COVID, 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 COVID. By the way, on November 4th, you won't hear about it anymore."
Yeah? Talk to me tomorrow. In our last report, I told you about recent incidents involving the so-called Trump train. Caravans of cars and pickups sporting huge Trump flags and stickers, holding up traffic and, in many cases, endangering other motorists on the road. Well, incredulously, some Republicans are also touting the dangerous episodes, like Florida's juvenile senior senator, Marco Rubio.
I saw yesterday a video of these people in Texas. Did you see it? All the cars on the road with the... We love what they did, but here's the thing they don't know. We do that in Florida every day.
Just unconscionable. Based on a similar incident in the tri-state area over the weekend, New Jersey police said Monday that they might lodge charges against the leaders of one of those pro-Trump caravans. This one clogged the Garden State Parkway on Sunday. New Jersey State Police Superintendent Patrick Callahan called the action irresponsible and dangerous, saying there's plenty of ways for people to make their voices heard, but when they endanger the lives of those out there traveling on our highways and byways, there's really no excuse for it. And just in case you were wondering what's in store for us should Trump eke out another win or more likely steal the election outright, well, on Wednesday, the United States will leave the Paris Climate Accord. The decision set in motion in a Trump letter a year ago is official on November 4th. If voters give Trump a second term, his administration could have major impacts with the expansions of offshore drilling and changes to the way the Environmental Protection Agency makes regulatory and enforcement decisions. And don't forget, 1 week from today, the Supreme Court will hear the Trump administration's challenge to what's left of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, just as the program's annual open enrollment period kicked off on Sunday. And experts say now it's more important than ever to have health insurance. Millions more people will be looking for coverage this year after losing their jobs. And of course, COVID-19 is spreading like wildfire and is now a pre-existing condition.
Democracy is coming to the USA.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. It is Election Day, possibly the most important election in our lives. If you haven't done so already, please vote.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown, Chowder, Tuesdays, Election Day in America. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the continental United States of America, where it is currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Expecting a high of nearly the same as yesterday, which was around 73 to 75, not too bad. A good deal of sunshine today, though some clouds could be wisping in. Winds light and variable. Lows overnight in the mid-40s with a few clouds and a slight chance of a rain shower. We would like to have that. Winds light and variable, mainly sunny tomorrow with highs in the mid-70s. Winds remaining light and variable, with possibly copious amounts of rain coming in tomorrow night, starting off with a half an inch. We would like that. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now spiked to 1,928. We're going to pop 2,000 in a day or two at the most. Deceased have now stands at 7, though of course it is still a gross undercount. Pollen is rated at none, and the air quality index in the region is good at 34 parts per million in the daytime. UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.06 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 52 and partly cloudy. Rome is 66 and sunny. Kyiv is 47 degrees and cloudy. Kabul is 55 and fair. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 56 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 51 degrees, mostly cloudy. And New York, New York is 51 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted, these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A 4-day hearing in a landmark legal case that could strip Russia of its identity at the next 2 Olympic Games, and 4 years of world championships opened yesterday, Monday. The Court of Arbitration for Sport said the dispute between the World Anti-Doping Agency and its Russian affiliate known as RUSADA began at an undisclosed location in Lausanne, with some parties, including the 3 judges, joining by video link. The CAS panel of judges from Australia, France, and Italy are unlikely to give a ruling for at least several weeks. A further appeal is possible at Switzerland's Supreme Court. The case centers on a Moscow testing laboratory database that was long sealed by Russian state authorities before being handed over to the WADA investigators last year. Data had been deleted, altered, and added. The Russian Anti-Doping Agency has not accepted being ruled non-compliant last December, nor accepted a slate of punishments provided by the court's executive committee. The sanctions by WADA had requested included a ban on Russia's flag, the anthem, and team name at the Tokyo Olympics next year, the 2022 Beijing Winter Games, and other major events organized by sports and organizations signed up to the World Anti-Doping Code.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Edith M. Lederer of the AP brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown, Chowder, Election Day in America, Tuesday. More than 70 nations voiced strong opposition to what they consider threats to the International Criminal Court and decried sanctions on its top officials, issuing a statement that did not name any country, but was clearly aimed at the U.S. They declared that any attempt to undermine the independence of the court should not be tolerated. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced on September 2 that the U.S. was imposing sanctions, including a freeze on assets held in the U.S. or subject to U.S. law, on ICC Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda and the tribunal's head of jurisdiction over the court's continuing investigation of war crimes against Americans. How dare they? A joint statement from 71 parties to the Rome Statute that has established the court to prosecute genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity reiterated their commitment to preserve the tribunal's integrity and independence, undeterred by any measures or threats against the court, its officials, and those cooperating with it. Well, hopefully, with a new administration, we might, again, follow the rule of law. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, and you know Netroots Radio will broadcast on. We've got a lot of live shows coming up here on our national feed to give us all the breaking news on the election as it breaks, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we're going to meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appétit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des quand elle était hier, des photos de bord de mer dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.